It totally baffles me that so many are confused about the PS4 Pro reveal yesterday. Sony literally spelt it out for you, including the games media, who are somewhat lost about PlayStation Pro 2. Prepare to be unconfused. What is up, Twitter thugs, social media reprobates, and gamers in general? I'm Fox, you're watching PlayStation News Now, your source of news, rumor, game industry discussion, and weekly The Gamer Couch podcast. You can keep up to date by following the channel via Twitter, Fox, at PlayStation News Now, as seen in the bottom right of your screen. This community exhausts me. In today's video, in an article written by Digital Foundry's very own Richard Ledbetter, it was all about PS4 Pro's tech and the 3 hours hands-on with Sony's latest addition to the PS4 generation. But hey, why don't I just go ahead and read the article verbatim? The article's link is in this video's description. Now do keep in mind this is all from Richard's point of view, so if I say I mean him. So here goes. I went into the PlayStation meeting today as a skeptic, believing that the hardware may not be up to the task of powering a 4K display. The good news is that several hours later, I emerged from the event impressed with the quality of the experience and respectful of the wizardry utilized to make this GPU punch above its weight. However, fundamentally, there's little doubt that the PlayStation 4 Pro is going to be a tough sell. Traditional gaming media simply can't capture and communicate the quality of the imagery I saw today, as there's no real way to showcase HDR meaningfully, and this is actually a key component of the PlayStation 4 Pro experience. 4K is impressive and a worthy upgrade in its own right, but HDR takes it to a next level. But first, let's talk about the actual box itself. It turns out that the PS4 CUH 2000 Slim Leak was even more significant than we realized. It was a preview of the design language that would carry across the entire PlayStation line, and the PlayStation 4 Pro CUH 7000 designation looks very much like a bigger brother of sorts. A bigger, fatter, triple-decker, but with very similar design cues, right down to the collection of PlayStation symbols on the underside of the unit. Curiously, the LED light strip found on the side of the CUH 1000 series PS4 has been relocated to the front of the machine, recessed into the lower slash, and yes, finally we have a rear USB 3.0 port in addition to a brace on the front. Now, it was not possible to get an idea of acoustics in the PlayStation meeting environment, but max power consumption is rated at 310 watts. We assume that this is the maximum load capable by the power supply unit, not a typical system draw, bearing in mind that a PC running a Core i7 6700K with a Radeon RX 480 and upclocked version of the Pro's core GPU tech draws just 270 watts in our tests. The power supply is internal, but it is interesting to note that the old figure 8 power input is replaced by a sturdier kettle-style socket, just like the launch model PlayStation 3. Elsewhere, the system looks and feels very much like the standard PlayStation 4. As the PlayStation meeting drew to a close, code was closed down and the system dropped back to the front end, where we saw a menu system virtually unchanged from the interface used on PS4 now. More functionality upgrades will come to the surface, we're sure, such as the 1080p remote play and sharing features, but what's clear is that it's not just the hardware design language that is unified between old hardware and new, it's the look and feel of the interface too. The real question is the extent to which PlayStation 4 Pro actually delivers a palpable upgrade, and whether Sony's hardware really can deliver a worthwhile experience for 4K displays. At a base level, we're already taking a look at the Polaris GPU technology, and we stress tested it at multiple resolutions, finding that it is clearly not a native 4K capable part. However, there will be full 3840 by 2160 resolution software. Speaking to Naughty Dog at the event, we were told that The Last of Us Remastered, just like its base PS4 version, will have a 30Hz mode that features enhanced image quality. The existing PS4 game features higher resolution shadows, maps, and those are joined by a full native 4K pixel count on the PS4 Pro. This drops down to a lower resolution at 60 frames per second, where we are told to expect improved performance compared to the original release on base hardware. And with Microsoft releasing press materials boasting about next year's Project Scorpio offering true 4K gaming, the question of upscaling must be addressed. In truth, the quality varies from one title to the next. Activision took to the stage talking of 4K and 60 frames per second for Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, then showed a section of gameplay that, while impressive, was clearly neither. Stair-step edges are also evident in the new Mass Effect running on PS4 Pro, though the low contrast aesthetic of the new level we saw hid most of the artifacts, and the base resolution itself is still a big upgrade over standard 1080p. However, a trio of the Sony first-party efforts looked seriously impressive. Horizon Zero Dawn, Days Gone, and infamous First Light all use the same cutting-edge upscaling technique. Previously, we've talked about the 4x4 checkerboard process, where a 2x2 pixel block is extrapolated out of a 4x4 equivalent, next-gen upscaling if you like. It also allows developers to construct a 2160p 4K frame buffer from half the pixels, a much closer fit to the Pro's GPU prowess. I first took a look at the results in Days Gone, the open-world survival horror title from Sony Bend. I observed the pixel structure on a 65-inch Sony 4K display from just 2 feet away, and then I moved even closer. It looked good, seriously good. There is a slight softness compared to the pin-sharp precision of a native 4K presentation, but even close up the effect works well. In a living room environment, it should work just fine. In common with the other titles using this technique, the demo code we saw can switch in real time between 1080p and 4K at the press of a button, with HDR on and off also selectable. There is a clear, unambiguous night and day difference between 1080p and the 4K mode, which is clearly resolving more than the basic 2x increase in pixel throughput being generated at the base level. In fact, the detail increase is almost revelatory, and that applies equally to both Days Gone and Horizon Zero Dawn. Infamous First Light also shows a colossal improvement, but it's interesting to note that while pausing the game while the screen is packed with explosive neon effects shows the base checkerboard effect can sometimes manifest around certain elements, principally the main character's neon lighting effects. It's virtually invisible though in motion. But the same can't be said for Deus Ex Mankind Divided's upscaling method, where visual pixel crawl was easy to see. But its pre-production code obviously, performance looked visibly worse than the base PS4 game, something Sony actively prohibits in its technical requirements for Pro software, and it didn't look quite right. The demo was unattended, so asking for technical details on the scaling method used wasn't possible. Speaking to developers on site, several aspects of the checkerboard technology came into focus. Up until now, we've seen it as a software post-process upscale, but in actual fact, it's one of a number of new custom features backed into the PlayStation 4 Pro's GPU. As such, comes with zero cost to game developers. We also understand that while it is a hardware feature, game makers do seem to have a certain level of control, which may perhaps explain why different games exhibit varying levels of artifacting. But the key takeaway is this: while the PlayStation 4 Pro GPU lacks the horsepower to render out challenging content at native 4K, the presentation we've seen under a number of titles clearly shows a worthwhile, highly desirable increase in fidelity over 1080p. One that does put a 4K screen to good use. Switching between Full HD and checkerboard 4K, the increase in detail is simply stunning. To its credit, Sony understands that a certain level of skepticism will persist here to no end Several Sony developers on site told us that the lead architect, Mark Cerny, will be going into specifics of the custom hardware features in the next few weeks. Enticingly, we're also told that there was more to the GPU enhancements mentioned than just the checkerboard upscaler, so the details there should be fascinating. The revelations do not end here. However, many of the demos, all of Sony's efforts, in fact including Uncharted 4, The Last of Us Remastered, had HDR on-off toggles baked into sample code, and this is where Sony is going to have real issues in selling the upgrade on offer. On the top-end screens used at the events at least, HDR was hugely important to the quality of the presentation, but the bottom line is simple. In some scenarios, HDR adds just as much extra detail as the additional resolution. In Horizon Zero Dawn, the skybox is transformed. On Uncharted 4, the beach on the island level we saw is washed out, completely lacking in texture until HDR is enabled. What's clear is that the perception of HDR having an impact on color vibrancy is only half the picture. Yes, contrast is massively improved, but in turn, this allows for much more detail to be resolved in the presentation. And that makes the announcement of HDR support for all PlayStation hardware something of a big deal. Yes, the feature does extend to gaming. It's going to be fascinating to see just how this all works out at 1080p, something we didn't see at the event today. There's an argument that says Sony handing out this free upgrade to existing PS4 users is likely to hinder Pro adoption. After all, this is a key feature of the new box. However, based on the hours spent with the hardware today, it seems far more likely that enabling this feature will work as a gateway drug of sorts, a sampler for the full fat experience you'll only get with the PS4 Pro. After all, as far as we know, HDR support is only available on 4K screens thus far. The importance of HDR, as impressive as it is in the flesh, will prove challenging to Sony in the short term at least. First of all, it's a nightmare to market effectively. It's extremely difficult to show the HDR difference via standard media. Screenshots and videos just won't cut it. Secondly, you're categorically missing something special by upgrading to a 4K screen that doesn't support HDR, meaning your choice of display is crucial. Thirdly, the way HDR is presented varies substantially between screens. It can look very, very different moving from one display to the next. The general rule of thumb here is to buy a screen with the brightest panel possible, but then we experienced during our recent 4K HDR screen test, you may encounter issues in terms of input lag. The startling reality for now is that Sony has created a cost-efficient box that is capable of getting great results from top-tier 4K display technology, but the cost of the right screen isn't going to be cheap for a long while. That said, the Panasonic DX750 we chose for our in-house display struck a great balance between affordability, HDR support, and low input lag, and we can't wait to test our PS4 Pro using it. Other aspects of the PS4 Pro became evident during our various demos. First of all, while most developers seem intent on supporting enhanced resolutions and HDR, the fact is that users of 1080p screens will only benefit from super sampling and perhaps a smoother frame rate on most titles. However, game makers also have the opportunity to prepare different presentations depending on the screen attached. So if you have a 1080 display, you might see more lush visuals, whereas if you have a 4K display on tap, you may get a resolution boost. What's slightly concerning here is that may well require adjusting resolution on the front end if, say, you'd prefer to take advantage of an enhanced 1080p mode rather than less visually impressive 4K presentation. We rather hope developers will embrace Crystal Dynamics' approach with Rise of the Tomb Raider, where you can switch between the various modes on offer within the pause menu. And we can confirm that reports are correct. Rise of the Tomb Raider has 3 different modes in PS4 Pro version only. A 4K native 30 presentation with HDR support that strikes an impressive balance between visual features and resolution. Then a 1080p 30 mode that ramps up quality settings to the max and at an unlocked frame rate mode for 1080p that sees performance vary between 40 to 60 FPS. We assume that this will be down to CPU bottlenecks, rather like Tomb Raider Definitive Edition on the standard PlayStation 4. At the PlayStation meeting, Crystal Dynamics were only showing the 4K mode. We've played a fair amount of this title recently on both the Titan X Pascal and dual GTX 1080 SLI. It is quite frankly one of the finest 4K gaming experiences available. PlayStation 4 Pro is compromised a touch. It looks slightly softer and quality presets are pared back, but the core of the experience, the upgrade factor over 1080p, is, if you like, there. This was by far and away the best third-party 4K title we saw at the PlayStation meeting. Going into the event, there was a sense of familiarity with the PlayStation 4 Pro GPU. After all, we tested the same AMD Radeon Polaris technology in the RX 480 on PC, and while there were some pleasant surprises in those tests, it was clear that limitation on compute and memory bandwidth took native 4K off the table. To its credit, Sony readily agreed that the GPU had its limits, but the custom hardware and techniques in place are doing a good job of matching the system's capability with 4K display technology. From a personal perspective, I went into the PlayStation meeting with a healthy skepticism and came out thinking that there is a cost-efficient console coming very soon that will indeed present a highly impressive upgrade option when paired with an Ultra HD screen. There was no panic upgrade on the Neo spec. We're still looking at a 4.2 T-flop GPU. Instead, Sony has opted for smart technology over raw rendering brute force, still achieving some really impressive results. This makes the PS4 Pro viable as a $399 or £349 box. This achievement is marred somewhat by the lack of Ultra HD Blu-ray support, a remarkable omission for a device marketed as a 4K Pro upgrade over the standard PlayStation 4. Perhaps it was required to hit the aggressive price point, but equally it may well reflect a lack of interest from Sony itself in this format. Regardless, it leaves Microsoft in the interesting position of having the only console to run Ultra HD disc format, and while actually take-up may be limited, it does really take away a little of the sheen away from Pro. Now the bottom line is this: if you're looking to invest a lot of money in a high-end 4K HDR display, you want an all-in-one box that gives you the most options for getting the most out of it. HDR media is limited at the moment as it is, so cutting off potential source of content for your new screen really comes across as a little short-sighted. But beyond the tech, what seems clear is that PlayStation 4 Pro will launch with a robust lineup of games, a mixture of enhanced new titles and a bunch of old favourites. While we fully expected to see Uncharted 4 at the event, the arrival of Infamous First Light, Second Son will also be patched, and The Last of Us Remastered was a delight. Everything we saw suggested that there are plenty of good reasons to return to those titles. Now going forward, the challenge remains. PlayStation 4 Pro will offer boosts for those with a 1080p screen, but the impact will be limited and the big gain really is in 4K and HDR. We've noted some apathy towards 4K gaming, but based on today's showing, the results are mostly very impressive. What we saw today is an upgrade worth having, but the reality is stark. Right now, you're not just looking at a console upgrade, but one that practically demands a new display purchase too. And the issue there is that getting the best 4K HDR experience certainly isn't cheap. Even when PlayStation 4 Pro itself looks set to offer great value, it's a potential minefield and one we'll be hoping to guide you through once the new PlayStation 4 Pro launches. And that's the end of the article, people. All Richard Ledbetter's thoughts, opinions, experiences with PlayStation 4 Pro. None of mine, though I obviously agree. The guys use the console, how can I disagree? I'm not a jaded, rabid super fanboy. But anyway, I just want to address a few things. People saying in Twitter, oh, you let us down, everything you said was a lie, blah 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 blah, you let us down, like they want me to go and slit my wrists. Yeah, I'm just gonna let me go and get a razor blade now. I'll slit my wrist for you, punks. Anyway, I put out information, rumor, conjecture, speculation, and facts that were presented to me from third-party sources. Okay? That's what I did. You all loved it while I was doing it. Everyone was jumping up and down. Yay, 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 yay. Bouncing up and down like they're in a bouncy castle. But just because you're unhappy with the console, it didn't quite match up to your lofty expectations. It's all my fault. Get over it. Here's a Kleenex. And also, Microsoft have been very disgraceful. I'm sorry it has to be said. Microsoft have shown no grace, no professionalism. Straight after or even during the PS4 Pro event, Microsoft was, especially Aaron Bloody Greenberg, on Twitter, almost ripping into Sony, saying we've got a real 4K console, and you know, PlayStation 4 Pro is going to be significantly dumped on by our platform. Basically, that's what they were saying. You know, trying to get that mind share for Xbox Scorpio. Microsoft, you need to be straight with your fan base. Tell them how much the console's likely to cost. Go ahead. Oh, let me think. You don't even know that yourselves yet, do you? You're waiting for the prices to fall. So Microsoft are taking a huge gamble. Don't even know how much they can sell this thing to you. Let me explain something to you people. It ain't gonna be cheap. Sony have gone for a price over, you know, locking people who really want to go to a next level in PS4 gaming, locking them out totally. They're giving you a nice fair price for what you're getting. 4.2 T-flops, you know, a little extra RAM, not quite the 12 gigabyte that was touted, a little extra RAM. Let's see what Microsoft offers you for the money. You know, for an extra, what, 1.8 T-flops, practically the entire PS4 console's power. That's the difference. You know, and realistically, you're not going to see a difference with third-party titles. What, native 4K is what you'll get. That's what you'll get. While it will still look super sharp and very clear, according to Richard Leadbeater, very clear on PlayStation 4 Pro, so they're not going to be missing, I think, nothing really of any consequence. And soon after the Scorpio, maybe a year or two, as I said in yesterday's Gamer Couch podcast, Sony will be announcing their next hardware, which will be infinitely more power than the Scorpios. It's a rat race, people. You're chasing an impossible dream. I say pick your platform and stick to it, and let the console last however long you want it to. That's what I'm going to do. PlayStation 4 Pro is going to last me 5 years, regardless of what Sony does next. I'm keeping that console, not upgrading, for at least a full 5 years. I'm going to get the most for my very reasonable 349 UK pounds. Alright, and I'm also going to, in light of Microsoft, to be honest with you, I don't really want to spend any more money with Microsoft. They're unprofessional. I can't justify giving money to a company like that. You know, it's not like a joke with the whole DRM can't, you know, share your game skit that Sony did. That was at least comical, but Microsoft are just being nasty with this. This is just nasty. There's not even a joke in it. It's just plain nasty. They're showing their true colors. So I have no interest in Scorpio from this day. I'm not going to bother with any Xbox hardware. I don't care what game comes out. It could be the best thing since sliced bread. I really don't give a monkeys. My Xbox One, I won't have it very soon, and all the games are going too. I will put that money to good use. Practically won't be paying for my PlayStation 4 Pro, because the Xbox One and all the games I've bought and purchased and supported Microsoft, supported all exclusive that some of these Xbox super fans didn't even support. Games like, you know, let me think, a certain game by Insomniac. Do I need to go any further? Huh? Right. I supported the game. Sunset Overdrive. So all the games and the Xbox One is going to fund my PlayStation 4 Pro purchase. Microsoft, you don't know when to shut the hell up. You just lost a customer. You lost a potential Xbox Scorpio customer, and you potentially lost. No wonder your fans are like the way they are. No wonder the super fans behave the way they do. Look at the company they have representing them. Microsoft is basically one big fanboy themselves. fanboy of themselves, fanboy of their own products, fanboy. Sony would never, I've never seen Sony do this to this degree. You know, they never belittled Microsoft's Xbox Scorpio event. I don't even think they commented until they were pressed by the media, and even then they were graceful about it. You know, there was no tweets about, oh look, Microsoft's switching generations on you lot, switch and bait. None of that. Sony were graceful. So that's the company that gets my money going forward. Until Sony screws up monumentally, they're going to receive my money. And if all these console companies really want to play silly buggers going forward and really let down the consumer base, I will hop onto the PC. I have the option, PC. So that's where I'm ending it. For the time being, just Sony. I'm not even really going to talk about Xbox on the channel no more, which will come as a great relief to many of the pro PlayStation 4 gamers out there. I'm rarely going to mention Xbox One, only when it's absolutely necessary, but I'm not going to mention that console or the Scorpio anymore in any of my news pieces unless it's an article by someone else and it makes sense to do it. Goodbye Microsoft, you just lost a customer.